Italy has more UNESCO World Heritage Sites than any other country on Earth. More Roman ruins, more Renaissance art, and more coastline than most travelers ever manage to see in one trip. The problem isn't finding things to do, it's deciding what to cut. So we've done that work for you. Welcome to Optimized Travel Destinations. My name is Ricky, and I am part of the Optimized Travel team. We help travelers plan amazing trips through our concierge service, and our team has worked together to list the absolute best places Italy has to offer. These are the top 15 places to visit in Italy. Counting down from 15 to 1, make sure to stay until the end because number 1 might just surprise you. Number 15, Puglia and Alberobello. If you want to understand Italy beyond the postcard version, go south. Puglia forms the heel of Italy's boot, stretching along two coastlines, the Adriatic to the east and the Ionian to the west. It sits about 4 hours south of Roma by train or a short flight from most European hubs. At the heart of the region sits Alberobello, a UNESCO World Heritage Site of extraordinary strangeness. It is a neighborhood of over 1,000 truly circular dry stone houses with conical roofs that look like something a child drew but somehow managed to build at scale. Nobody is entirely sure why the trulli were built this way, though one popular theory is that the roofs could be quickly dismantled to avoid paying taxes to the Kingdom of Napoli. Whatever the reason, walking through the Rione Monti quarter in the early morning before the tour groups arrive feels genuinely surreal. The further south you go in Puglia, the more the landscape opens up. Lecce is often called the Florence of the South for its extraordinary Baroque architecture, and the city's cream-colored stone glows at sunset in a way that stops you mid-step. The Adriatic coast around Pogliano a Mare has sea caves and dramatic cliffs that very few outside Italy seem to have heard of. And the food across the region. Orecchieto pasta with cime di rapa, burrata made fresh that morning, olive oil from trees that predate the Roman Empire, is among the best in the country. I recommend spending at least one night in a trullo converted into accommodation. It sounds gimmicky, but is genuinely unforgettable once you're inside, with the curved stone walls and the silence. The best time to visit Puglia is May, June, or September. July and August are hot, crowded, and significantly more expensive. A hire car makes a real difference here. The coast road between Bari and Lecce passes through a landscape that you cannot experience from a train window. Try to give Puglia at least 4 nights. It's the kind of region that reveals itself slowly, and the further off the main circuit you go, the better it gets. Number 14, Orvieto. Some Italian hill towns feel like living museums. Orvieto feels like a secret. This small city in Umbria sits on a flat-topped tuffo cliff that rises vertically from the valley floor about 90 minutes north of Roma by direct train. The setting alone would be enough, but what sits on top earns the visit in full. The Gothic cathedral here is considered by many to be the most beautiful church in Italy. With facade mosaics so detailed, they make the Duomo in Florence feel almost restrained by comparison. The interior holds the chapel of San Brizzo, with frescoes by Luca Signorelli that were a direct influence on Michelangelo when he came to plan the Sistine Chapel ceiling. Beneath the city, hundreds of years of tunneling have left a labyrinth of underground passages, wine cellars, dovecotes, and the Etruscan wells that you can explore with a guide. Above ground, the Piazza del Duomo has the kind of natural acoustics where every footstep echoes and conversations carry 30 meters. The local wine, Orvieto Classico, is crisp and good and considered cheaper than some quality wine in Tuscany. The best thing about Orvieto is that it stays noticeably quieter than most famous hill towns. Most visitors come on a day trip from Roma, which means they can have the streets almost entirely to yourself after 6 p.m. Spring and autumn are the ideal seasons, though Orvieto works well in winter too, when the cathedral square is empty and the light is low and golden. The underground city tours run daily and are worth booking ahead. I'd give it 1 night minimum. Arriving in the afternoon by train, taking the funiculari up the cliff, and walking the streets after the day visitors leave is a completely different experience from the daytime crowds. Number 13. Portofino and the Ligurian Riviera. There's a version of the Italian Riviera that involves enormous yachts and €40 cocktails. And then there's the real one. The Ligurian coast curves between France and Tuscany along a narrow strip of mountains and sea. Its most famous village, Portofino, sits at the tip of a narrow peninsula about 35 kilometers southeast of Genoa, reachable by ferry or coastal path from the Santa Margherita Liguri. Portofino's harbor is small, genuinely beautiful, and yes, expensive. But the path leading around the headland to the lighthouse and beyond to Punta Chiappa costs nothing and rewards with views that even skilled photographers struggle to capture properly. The wider Riviera di La Venta has some underrated gems alongside it. Camalai is a working fish village where the houses are painted in deep terracotta and yellow, stacked so tightly up the cliff they look like a stage set. The medieval abbey of San Frutoso is reachable only by foot or boat, sitting in a cove so hidden it barely seems real. And Genoa itself is so often skipped that it deserves a mention here. Its UNESCO-listed Carugi alleyway district is genuinely one of Europe's most atmospheric medieval neighborhoods, and the city's food scene, focaccia, farinata, panzotti, and walnut sauce is serious and almost entirely off the tourist radar. My favorite thing about this stretch of coast is the pesto. The Ligurian basil is smaller leafed and sweeter than anywhere else, and a plate of trofia al pesto at a family trattoria here calibrates your understanding of what the sauce is actually supposed to taste like. April through June and September are the best windows. The water is warm enough to swim, the trails are clear, and prices drop noticeably. Ferries connect Santa Margherita, Portofino, and Camogli efficiently, so you can move along the coast without a car. I'd plan 2 nights based in Santa Margherita, using the ferry to reach Portofino and the coastal paths at your own pace. Number 12. Matera. Matera is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities on Earth, and walking into it for the first time feels appropriately disorienting. The city sits in the Basilicata region in the instep of Italy's boot, about 4 hours south of Napoli and roughly 3 hours from Bari. What defines Matera in Sassi, 2 ravine-carved neighborhoods named Sasso Cavioso and Sasso Barassano. For thousands of years, people lived in cave houses cut directly into the limestone. In the 1950s, the Italian government forcibly relocated the residents, declaring the caves uninhabitable. The same caves have since been converted into boutique hotels, restaurants, and churches, some of the most atmospheric accommodation in Europe. The Rupestrian churches cut into the rock, some with Byzantine frescoes still intact after 1,000 years, are scattered through the ravine. A local guide who knows which doors to knock on is genuinely worth hiring for a morning. At night, Matera becomes something else entirely. The whole city is lit with warm lanterns, and the silence in the Sassi feels geological, like the stone itself is breathing. It is perhaps no surprise that directors keep choosing it as a stand-in for ancient Jerusalem. Mel Gibson filmed The Passion of the Christ here, and parts of the 2021 Bond film No Time to Die were shot in the streets. If I had to pick one thing to do in Matera, it would be booking a cave hotel and walking the ravine path after 10 p.m., when the day visitors have gone. The city belongs to itself at night in a way that very few places in Italy do. Matera is best visited in spring or autumn. Summer has become increasingly crowded since the city was a European capital of culture in 2019, and the heat inside the ravine is considerable in July and August. I'd stay 2 nights, one to orient yourself and find the main churches, and a second to go deeper into the Rupestrian district and the lesser visited parts of the ravine. Number 11. Lake Como. Lake Como is the kind of place that makes you understand why the Grand Tour existed. The lake sits in the Lombardy region, roughly 45 kilometers north of Milano, and tucked hard against the Prealps, reachable in about an hour by train from Milano Centralia. The lake is shaped like an upside-down Y, and the three arms create very different personalities. The western branch feels grand and villa-lined. The eastern branch is quieter and more wooded. And the southern shore, where the towns cluster, is where most visitors spend their time. Bellagio is the village everyone photographs, with its promontory position, stepped lanes, and the view from the Villa Cerblioni Gardens. It earns its reputation, but Verena on the eastern shore is arguably lovelier and considerably less crowded, with a lakeside promenade barely wide enough for two people to walk side by side. Villa da Balbinotto on the Tremezina Peninsula is worth the boat trip. Its tiered gardens were used in both Casino Royale and Attack of the Clones, and on a clear day, the Alps behind the lake look too composed to be real. The town of Como at the southern tip is worth an hour. The Silk Museum there tells the story of an industry that made this region wealthy for centuries. I think the ferry is the underrated way to see the lake. Buying a day pass and riding between villages, stopping where the mood takes you, is one of the most pleasant afternoons Italy offers. Avoid July and August if you can. The lake becomes very crowded and accommodation prices peak sharply. May and September offer warm water, clear skies, and roughly half the crowds. I'd recommend 2 nights, one day on the ferry between villages, one day for Villa Balbinotto, and a slow evening in Verena. Number 10, Cinque Terre. 5 villages, no cars, terraced vineyards dropping straight into the sea. Cinque Terre is famous for a reason, and the reason holds up. The 5 villages, Montesero al Mare, Vernazza, Cornelia, Manarola, and Riamaggiore, cling to a 12-kilometer stretch of Ligurian coastline between La Spezia and Levento. They are connected by train, ferry, and on foot. The famous Senza Azzurro coastline path links them across a landscape of olive groves, lemon trees, and precipitous drops to the sea. Vernazza is the one most visitors pick as the most beautiful, with its natural harbor, castle tower above the cove, and pastel facades stacked above the waterfront. Manarola at sunset, lit from the west, is arguably the best photograph. Cornelia sits on a hilltop rather than the waterfront and is the quietest of the 5, partly because it requires climbing a 377-step staircase from the station, which deters enough people to make it noticeably more peaceful. Sciacquatera, the dessert wine made from those terraced vineyards, is something very few visitors think to seek out. Small glass with almond biscuits in a village bar is worth hunting down. Honestly, the scattera is the most overlooked thing in Cinque Terre, and finding it in a proper village bar rather than a tourist shop is the difference between an average afternoon and a great one. Visit in April, May, or October. Summer brings very large crowds on the coastal path, and several sections have been closed in recent years due to landslide risks. Always check the trail status before setting out. If you can, stay at least 2 nights in one of the villages. The atmosphere shifts completely after the day trippers leave on the afternoon trains, and that quieter version of Cinque Terre is the one worth experiencing. Number 9, Sicily. Sicily isn't just the largest island in the Mediterranean. It's a separate civilization grafted onto Italy with 2,000 years of Greek, Arab, Norman, Spanish, and Italian layering what makes anywhere on the mainland feel straightforward by comparison. The island sits off the toe of Italy's boot, separated from Calabria by the 3-kilometer Strait of Messina, reachable by ferry from the Villa San Giovanni or by direct flights to Palermo or Catania from most European airports. The Valley of the Temples outside Argentino contains the most preserved ancient Greek temples in the world, in better condition than anything in Athens. That fact tends to stop people when they hear it, but it is simply true. The Temple of Concordia was converted into a church in the 6th century, which is precisely why it survived intact. Taormina on the east coast sits on a cliff above the sea with Mount Etna visible behind. The Teatro Greco there is still used for concerts and opera performances in summer. Palermo is one of Europe's most underrated city breaks. The Bolero Market, the Cappella Palatina with its golden Byzantine mosaics, and the street food, arancini, pennelle, chiffon, makes it one of the best eating cities in Italy. My favorite thing about Sicily is how genuinely different it feels from northern Italy. The pace, the food, the architecture, the dialect, all of it signals that you have arrived somewhere with its own identity, not just a sunnier extension of the mainland. Spring, roughly March to May, is the best time. Wildflowers cover the hillsides, the temples are uncrowded, and the sea is warm enough to swim by late May. A hire car is essential for reaching the Valley of the Temples and the Scala dei Turchi properly. Try to give Sicily at least 5 nights. It is a large island with very different regions, and rushing it means missing parts that make it genuinely unlike anywhere else in the Mediterranean. Number 8. Bologna. Italy has more beautiful cities per square kilometer than anywhere else on Earth, and Bologna somehow gets overlooked by most international visitors. That is a gift for those who find it. The city sits in the Emilia-Romagna region in the foot of the Apennines, midway between Milan and Florence, and extremely well connected by high-speed rail. The city center is characterized by its 40 kilometers of covered porticos, arched walkways that thread through the streets so you can walk most of the historic center without ever getting rained on. The Piazza Maggiore is one of the finest medieval squares in Europe, anchored by the unfinished facade of San Portino, a church that was originally planned to be larger than St. Peter's in Rome before the Vatican intervened. The 2 medieval towers, the Selinelli and the shorter, leaning Garasenda, are the city's defining skyline. The University of Bologna, founded in 1088, is the oldest in the Western world, and the city still has the quality of a place where thinking is taken seriously. Bologna is called La Grassa, which means the fat one, for its food, and the reputation is completely justified. Tortellini and brodo, tagliatella al ragu, mortadello from the market. This is the city that invented most of what the world calls Italian food. It is also significantly cheaper than Florence or Venice. I recommend arriving on a Saturday morning for the Mercato di Mezzo and the Quadrilatero market area. An hour wandering through stalls of cured meats, fresh pasta, and aged cheeses is as good an introduction to the city as any museum. Bologna works in any season. It is a city rather than a beach destination, so the weather matters less than it does anywhere else on this list. It also makes an excellent base for day trips. Modena for balsamic vinegar, and Parma for Parmesan Reggiano and prosciutto. I'd give it 2 nights. It is one of those cities that looks straightforward on a map and then reveals a whole other layer once you're actually walking it. Number 7. The Dolomites. The Dolomites are part of the Italy that does not look like Italy. They look like a fever dream from a geology textbook. This UNESCO-listed mountain range sits in the northeastern corner of the country, spanning the provinces of South Tyrol, Trentino, and Belluno, with the nearest major getaways being Bolzano and Trento, both accessible by train from Verona or Venice in under 2 hours. The rock formations themselves, pale gray limestone towers rising vertically from green pastures, come in a different color every hour of the day, turning pink and orange at sunrise and sunset in a phenomenon the locals call androsera. The 3 peaks of Tre Cime di Lavaredo are the most iconic formation. The 10-kilometer circuit trail around them is one of the most photographed hikes in Europe. Lake Braies in the Prox Valley is another image you have almost certainly seen without knowing where it is. A turquoise lake at the foot of a vertical rock wall with wooden rowing boats tied to the shore. The Rifugi Mountains, huts accessible by trail or cable car, serve proper Italian food at altitude. Sitting at a Rifugio terrace with a plate of pasta and a view across the valley is a particular kind of pleasure that is very hard to replicate anywhere else. I actually think September is the real highlight here, more than the peak summer weeks. The larches turn gold, the trails thin out, and the light on the limestone at the time of year is something photographers come specifically for. Summer hiking season runs June to September, and winter is excellent for skiing. A car or Dolomiti bus service is essential as the valleys are not well connected by rail. I'd base yourself in Cortino d'Ampezzo or the Val Gardena and allow at least 3 nights to explore the trails and Rifugi properly. Number 6. Napoli and Pompeii. Napoli is chaotic, loud, overwhelming, and one of the most alive cities in Italy. Pompeii, next door, is the opposite, a city frozen perfectly in the 2nd century, silent as ash. Napoli is the capital of Campania, sitting on the bay of the same name roughly 230 kilometers south of Rome, with Mount Vesuvius visible from almost anywhere in the city. Pompeii covers 66 hectares, and you could spend 2 full days here without covering it all. The preserved streets still carry stone ruts from chariot wheels. Election graffiti remains on the walls. Even the Thermopylae, the ancient Roman equivalent of fast food stalls, survived here intact. Pompeii does not feel like ruins so much as a readable city. The plaster casts of the victims made by pouring concrete into the voids left in the ash are permanently arresting. Nearby, Herculean is smaller but even better preserved. Organic material like wooden beams, food, and cloth survived in a way that they did not at Pompeii. Napoli rewards these willing to get slightly lost. The Spaccanapoli Street cuts straight through the historic center. The Quartiere Spagnoli neighborhood is washing lines and narrow alleys and the best pizza in the world. Pizzeria da Michele has been making the same 2 pizzas since the 1870s. The Capodimonte Museum holds Caravaggio and Titian canvases in rooms where you are often almost alone. Honestly, the combination of Napoli and Pompeii in 3 days is one of the most dense and rewarding itineraries in Italy. The city is rougher around the edges than Rome or Florence, which puts some people off. But that roughness is precisely what makes it feel real. Spring and autumn are ideal, and Pompeii becomes extremely crowded by mid-morning in summer, so arriving at opening time, 9 a.m., is essential in peak season. Book Pompeii entry online in advance, as queues at the gate can run over an hour during July and August. I'd plan 3 nights, a full day at Pompeii and the Herculaneum, and 2 days in Napoli for the city, the museum, and the food. Number 5. The Amalfi Coast. The Amalfi Coast is one of those places where the photographs do not quite capture it. What photographs cannot capture is the vertigo. This 50-kilometer stretch of cliff and coast runs along the southern edge of the Sorrentine Peninsula, between Pastiano in the west and Vietri sul Mare in the east, about 60 kilometers south of Napoli. The towns are stacked vertically against limestone cliffs that drop straight through the Tyrrhenian Sea, connected by a Cornish road barely wide enough for 2 buses to pass each other. Positano is the most photographed village, the pastel houses cascading from the cliffside to the beach, and it is genuinely beautiful, though it has become very expensive and crowded in the summer. The town of Amalfi itself has an Arab-Norman cathedral, the Duomo di Santa Andrea, sitting at the top of a grand staircase above the harbor. Above the main road, Ravello is quieter and possibly more rewarding. The gardens of Villa Cimboron have a terrace called the Terrace of Infinity, with a view down to the sea that stops most people completely. Susvato lemons, the elongated variety grown on these cliff terraces, are the best in Italy. The limoncello made from them is almost incomparable to any commercial version, and you can find good bottles of family-run shops throughout the villages. If I had to pick one thing to do here, it would be hiring a small boat for the day and approaching the coast from the sea. The perspective reverses everything. You see the towns as the Romans and the medieval seafarers saw them, dropping from cliff to water, which is the most accurate way to understand why the place exists at all. The coast at its best in May, June, and September. July and August bring the main coastal road to near standstill, and accommodation prices roughly double. Priano, a smaller village midway between Pastano and Amalfi, is considerably cheaper and just as well placed for exploring both directions. I'd stay 3 nights and use the ferry to move between villages rather than the road. It is slower, cheaper, and gives you the approach the place deserves. Number 4. Venice. Venice has been declared finished, dying, and over-tourist for at least 40 years. It continues to be one of the most extraordinary places humans have ever built. The city sits on 118 small islands in a lagoon on the northeastern coast of Italy, connected to the mainland by a single road and a rail causeway at Mestre. There are no roads inside Venice. Movement is by water or on foot, which is disorienting for about 40 minutes and then becomes the only logical way to exist. The Grand Canal curves through the city for 3.8 kilometers, lined with Gothic and Renaissance palaces that still have their original facades. The Palazzo Caordoro and the Palazzo Bardarigo, and the dozens of others behind them. Basilia di San Marco has gold mosaics covering nearly 8,000 square meters of ceiling and walls, and at the right time of day, with the right light, it becomes hallucinatory. The outlying islands are worth the Vaporetto ride, Burano for its luridly colored fishermen's houses, and Torcello for a Byzantine cathedral that predates most of Venice itself. The Rialto Fish Market, open Tuesday to Saturday and finishing by midday, has been in continuous operation since 1097. I think the Rialto Fish Market is the real highlight of Venice. More than any museum or church, it has been in continuous operation since 1097, and buying something from the stalls and sitting on the canal steps to eat it is the most honest version of the city. Go in winter if at all possible, November to February. The crowds thin dramatically, the city fills with low morning fog, the Acqua Alta flooding, which typically runs October to January, is actually fascinating rather than inconvenient if you have a decent pair of waterproof boots. I'd give it 3 nights. Venice takes time to reveal itself, and the version available at 6 a.m. before the cruise ships arrive is worth the early alarm. Number 3. Florence. Florence, or Firenze, contains more recognized Renaissance masterworks per square kilometer than anywhere else in the world. That is not an exaggeration, it is a UNESCO metric. The city sits in a bowl in the Arno Valley, surrounded by cypress-covered hills, about 90 minutes north of Roma and 90 minutes south of Milan by high-speed rail. The historic center is small enough to walk across in 30 minutes, which makes the density of what is inside it almost overwhelming. The Uffizi Gallery alone could occupy 2 full days. Botticelli's Primavera and Birth of Venice, Leonardo's Annunciation, Raphael's portraits, Caravaggio's Medusa. The Accademia has Michelangelo's David, which is much larger than you'd expect and much more emotionally affecting than any reproduction suggests. The Duomo, the Cathedral of Santa Maria del Fiore, has a dome engineered by Brunelleschi in 1436 that was not technically surpassed until the 19th century. But the version of Florence most worth finding is the neighborhood one. The Oltrarno district, south of the Arno, with its artisan workshops still producing leather goods and picture frames, is centuries-old traditions, its smaller piazza, where locals actually sit in the evenings, and its churches that do not charge admission but contain frescoes that nobody is looking at. Honestly, Florence rewards multiple visits more than almost any Italian city. The first time is for the big monuments. The second is for the understanding of why they exist and what surrounds them. Book Uffizi and Accademia tickets well in advance. Same-day entry is essentially impossible from April to October. Spring and autumn are ideal. Summer is very crowded and hot, though the city does not close down the way coastal resorts do. A full 4 days gives you the major galleries, the Oltrarno, a half-day trip to Fiesole above the city, and at least one afternoon with no agenda at all. Number 2. Tuscany. Tuscany is not really one place. It's a whole civilization spread across hills, and it takes several visits to start understanding what is actually made of. The region covers roughly 23,000 square kilometers of central Italy, with Florence as its capital and a landscape that ranges from the Apennine Mountains in the north to the Amalfi Coast in the south. The image most people carry of Tuscany, rolling hills, cypress trees, and pale dirt roads, is in the south of the region around Pienza and the Val d'Orcia. This is a UNESCO landscape in its own right, and driving the white gravel roads between Montalcino and Pienza at dawn is one of the most quietly satisfying things you can do in Italy. Siena is often called the rival in Florence, and with good reason. The Piazza del Campo is one of the most finest medieval squares in Europe, and the Polnio horse race held there twice a year in July and August is unlike anything else Italy offers. San Gimignano is the tower city with 14 medieval towers still standing in a hilltop village, and nearby Volterra is less visited and arguably more atmospherically preserved. Montalcino produces Brunello di Malcino, which many consider Italy's finest red wine. The Enoteca in the fortress pours it with appropriate reverence. I recommend renting a farmhouse, an agrestimo, or for at least 3 nights in the Val d'Orcia. Waking up in that landscape, driving the white roads and know where you have to be is the most Tuscan thing you can do, and it still feels like a privilege every time. Tuscany is best in May, when the poppies are in the fields, and in October when the grape harvest is finished and the olive groves go silver in the autumn light. Winter is generally underrated. The hill towns are empty, the light is dramatic, and truffle season runs through December. I'd recommend a minimum of 5 nights across the region. Split the time between a base in the Val d'Orcia and a couple of nights in Siena to cover both the landscape and the cities properly. Before I reveal number 1, the place our whole team agreed belongs at the top of this list, I want to take a moment to tell you about why we made this video in the first place. Planning a trip to Italy can be genuinely overwhelming. Between the regional train booking systems, the peak season accommodation pressure, the museum reservation windows, and the sheer volume of things worth seeing, it is genuinely difficult to know where to start, or how to fit it all into 2 weeks without spending the whole trip on a train. That is exactly what Optimized Travel was built for. We build personalized Italian itineraries that connect the right places in the right order, handle the logistics, and make sure you don't miss the things that guidebooks leave out. Head to optimizedtravel.com to find out more, or click the link in the description. And now, number 1, Roma. Every list of Italian destinations ends here, and every list is right to. Roma is the capital of Italy and sits roughly in the center of the city, 230 kilometers south of Florence, and connected to every major Italian city by high-speed rail. The city has been continuously inhabited for close to 3,000 years, and the result is a place where layers of history sit on top of each other so densely that medieval buildings use Roman temple columns for structural support, and Renaissance palaces are built directly over ancient bath complexes. The Colosseum, the Anfiteatro Flavio, held between 50,000 and 80,000 spectators, is and remains the largest amphitheater ever built. The Pantheon has the largest reinforced concrete dome in history, with a hole in the ceiling called the oculus, through which a shaft of sunlight moves around the interior throughout the day. The Vatican, technically a separate city-state, contains the Sistine Chapel, and St. Peter's Basilica, whose dome by Michelangelo is visible from most of the city. But Rome is also the Travestieri neighborhood at 11 p.m., tables out on the cobblestones, the aperitivo flowing, cats moving between the ruins and the restaurants. It is the Campo dei Fiori market at 8 a.m. before the tourists arrive. It is a plate of cacio de pepe at a restaurant with no English menu. And it is the Borghese Gallery, where Bernini's sculpture seems to exist in a different dimension from everything else you have seen, in rooms where, if you book correctly, you may be nearly alone. If I had to pick one thing to do in Rome, it would be an early morning Colosseum access. The first entry slot before the main day groups arrives gives you a close to an hour in the arena without barely anyone else, and that changes the experience of the place completely. Roma works in any season, but March through May and October are the most pleasant for walking. Summer is hot and crowded, but the city does not empty. Romans stay, and so does the energy. Book the Colosseum, Vatican museums, and the Borghese Gallery well in advance, as well as required timed entry at the Borghese in particular has very limited slots. I'd give Rome 5 days, not because you will run out of things to see, but because the first 2 days go to the obvious monuments, and it is the only on day 3 when you start wandering without a map, and the city actually starts to make sense. Those are the 15 best places to visit in Italy, from the Ciuli u Puglia and the cave city of Matera, all the way to the eternal city of Roma. This country genuinely never gets old. If you're ready to plan your trip, head to optimizetravel.com. Our team is ready to help you build the perfect itinerary. And let us know in the comments, which of these 15 Italian destinations would you visit first? Are you going to ancient with the Rome or Pompeii, or are you heading somewhere unexpected like Matera or the Dolomites? Drop it below. We read every single one. And if you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe. We cover the world's best destinations every week, and we'd love to have you along for the ride.